So yeah, hi, my name's Jenny. I am the Secretary of Edinburgh University Women in STEM. So for anyone who is new to Edinburgh University Women in STEM or to Women in STEM Connect series, this is our third Women in STEM Connect event. We have been organising weekly Zoom calls over the summer focusing on various topics. We will discuss recent events and use this platform as an opportunity to broaden the Edinburgh University Women STEM network across the globe to students, alumni and professionals. We had a successful networking event and a racism in academia event so far. So a wee background on Edinburgh University Women STEM Society. We aim to promote, support and connect women in STEM through engaging with a wide variety of successful individuals, allowing networking, new career opportunities, and to make friends with like-minded people. You can follow us on our social media channels for more information. Yes, so we've just added YouTube on just recently. So this event will be recorded as we are trying to upload this to YouTube and our other social media platforms. If you're not comfortable with this being recorded, please send me a message and I will edit you out from the video. If you encounter any technical difficulties, just send Sarah Lape a message or just message the chat if you have any questions. So yeah. For the first part of the event, we will have a panel session with the speakers and then break off into breakout rooms for a wee bit of networking. For today's event, we have invited our University of Edinburgh alumni to join us for this early careers panel discussion. So we have Briana Norris, Elisha Jhoti and Elena Lape. Yeah, if each of you could give us like a brief summary or introduction about you, that would be great. So if we can start with Briana Norris.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Briana. I graduated from the University of Edinburgh last year, 2019, with an MChem in chemistry. During my degree, I had a year in industry and I worked at Roche in Basel, Switzerland for a year in early phase research. And after I graduated, I went on to start the Novo Nordisk graduate program in Mars. So it's a bit random that it's called Mars, but it's for medical affairs, regulatory and safety. And that is what I'm doing now. And it's a 2-year program. So I'm just halfway through as of almost today. So yeah, nice to be here with you all.
That's great. And secondly, could we have Elena Lape?
Hi, my name is Elena. Last name is pronounced Lape. Super weird. So I'm originally from Lithuania and I've lived in Spain for a bit as well. At Edinburgh, I studied computer science and artificial intelligence for 3 years. During my years in uni, I organized and directed 𝗘𝗱𝗶𝗵. If you've ever been to the Edinburgh Hackathon, I was also part of 𝗘𝗱𝗶𝗵𝗵, and I had several jobs as a part-time developer during those years. And then last year I did an internship in San Francisco, which completely changed something in my brain. And I just decided to interrupt university and continue working as a contractor for the company that I interned with. So currently I am back from Panama, where I spent 4 or 5 months. I'm currently in London and I have 2 contracts. One of them is with GitHub and another one is with Transloaded. I do partnerships and business development, so not hands-on software engineering, but with tech.
Thank you very much. And next we have Elisha Jhoti.
Hi everyone, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm Elisha. I graduated in the same year as Briana with an MPhys in Astrophysics. And during my degree, I did a year abroad at Berkeley in my 3rd year. And then in the summer after my 4th year, I did an internship in Houston, Texas, with the Lunar and Planetary Institute / NASA Johnson Space Center. And then I decided I wanted to go into planetary science. So I'm now doing my PhD at UCLA in geophysics and space physics.
That is wonderful. Thank you very much. So I have some questions to start us off, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to message the chat and we can try and answer them too. So just a question for everyone, anyone who can answer. So you all have left the city you studied at, which is Edinburgh. And what was the transition from academia like for you? Settling into a new city, did you notice a difference in diversity and inclusion at all?
Well, I think I can start with that one. So I moved to Copenhagen in Denmark. So it's the exact same latitude as Edinburgh. So we have the exact same weather and darkness in the wintertime, which is probably good to have that, because otherwise it's quite a shock, I think, to a lot of the other graduates on my program who are coming from further afield. But I think leaving uni is quite a big step. And I think when, I don't know, it's a big step and it's kind of scary, but what was cool about the transition for me was that I was on this program with other graduates. So there's 20 of us and part of the criteria to join this program was you had to have lived abroad for at least 6 months. So I've lived in a lot of places growing up and throughout my degree as well, so I could apply. But that means that everyone who's joined me here has the same kind of similar backgrounds, similar kind of beliefs on life and ability to adapt. So all of us have kind of done it together and moved into this new place. So that's definitely helped for me.
So I can speak a bit about, like, I moved to a different country, like to the US, and that was like a big change, like moving from Edinburgh to the US, like especially moving to LA, because I feel like LA is like the antithesis of Edinburgh when it comes to like comparing cities. So yeah, I mean, it was like a big change. I kind of had like a bit of preparation for it, like having done the year abroad. So I think that really helped. Like I had like the confidence to do it. But I feel like in terms of diversity and inclusion, it's much more diverse here, and there's a lot of emphasis on diversity and inclusion, which I didn't notice at Edinburgh, because Edinburgh is not super diverse, especially in like my field. But I did notice now I'm not actually in the physics department anymore, I'm in the geosciences department, and it's the gender split is much better, but it's much less ethnically diverse, which is interesting. So I've been doing a lot of like diversity and inclusion work in the department, so hopefully we can make it better.
So I come from Lithuania and I've also lived in Panama, and I would say that those societies are relatively traditional when it comes to diversity and inclusion, and casual racism is a thing, casual sexism is totally a thing, and it's very much ingrained in society, and starts from a very, very young age. Even in like primary school, when girls and boys are split into different groups, girls have to learn cooking and boys have to learn, I think it was woodwork in my school. So yeah, Edinburgh is extremely good in this case, I think. So regarding the transition, I think what I definitely realized when I left Edinburgh is how good Edinburgh is. And of course, there are still many issues that we need to work through, but that's my experience so far.
That's great. I've got a question for Briana. How do you feel that a STEM degree prepared you for your current role as you make the transition to a more business-oriented career path?
Yeah, so what I do now is, so I'm working in MARS, Medical Affairs, Regulatory and Safety. And for my graduate program, you had to have a physical science or medical science background. So they looked for master's level science degrees like what I have. So that was kind of the main entry point, which kind of drew me towards this program. And then because I liked the industry, I thought it would be worth applying. In terms of how it's prepared me for it, I think with a science degree, as I assume most of us on this call are scientists or engineers, you there's so many skills that we learn that you realize are different to what people learn in business degrees. And I've had because there's only 4 scientists out of the 20 of us here right now in my cohort. And you notice the differences between the people in terms of their skills and their kind of university versus people coming from science backgrounds. I don't know, it's kind of like the organization and personal time management that you have when you're in the lab and you're the one driving your own project and it's all your own input. And if you don't do it, then no one else will, which I think the kind of ownership that you learn from the lab is definitely translatable into a business setting or a more business setting, because I still work with the products that we produce as a pharmaceutical company. And I think another skill is like the ability to communicate your science and your projects and to be able to communicate it to your peers, but also people above you. That also is an incredibly useful skill when you're pitching in a meeting with your people on your level or also your superiors, because you need to be able to communicate coherently and deliver like your message in a kind of succinct manner so you get your point across. And I think that's definitely something I got from my chemistry degree, especially in my last 2 years when I was both abroad and my master's year. And I think finally, the last thing I maybe want to say is that I think from a science background, you have like an inherent curiosity to problem solve and to learn more and to get to the bottom of something. Like you need all the information to be able to solve a problem, which I think is quite unique to us. I'm going to generalize as everyone on the call, because I don't know, it's how our degree prepares us to work on our own research project, and those kind of skills are so useful in a work setting, for sure.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so I've got a question for Elisha. So can you talk a little bit about some of the projects you have been working on during your PhD and some of your tips for transitioning into working on funded projects?
Yeah, so right now I'm in first year, so I still have to be taking classes, but I am doing research alongside that. I have my own research project, so my one is basically a mission concept for a super low altitude lunar orbiter, so a satellite that's going to orbit the moon at like a really low altitude, so very close to the surface, which hasn't been done before. So I'm basically doing the like calculations of the trajectory to see if it's going to crash into the surface. So it's something that I've never taken like an orbital mechanics class or like learn about this. Like I didn't learn about this in my degree, but I'm like having to like learn on the fly, which is quite interesting. So I'm really enjoying that. And I especially like that it's more kind of engineering, like space engineering kind of side of it, which I enjoy quite a lot. And then I'm also, like the way it works in planetary science, you're also often on like science teams for space missions. So I'm on the science team for a upcoming NASA mission called 𝗘𝗱𝗏𝗃, and it's basically a detector that's gonna image the surface of the moon in like the thermal wavelengths, and it's gonna be sent in 2021 and basically like measure the temperature of the surface of the moon. So just yesterday, I was like looking at potential landing sites and like looking at the different data sets that we have on these landing sites, and I'm making a PowerPoint to give to my like team so we can figure out like which is the best landing site that we want to land at. So it's pretty cool so far, and I'm basically doing what I've always wanted to do. So yeah, it's been pretty cool. And soon, in next week actually, the Mars 2020 rover is launching, and my group is also involved in that. My PhD supervisor is the co-eye of one of the instruments called RIMPAX, which is basically like a ground penetrating radar. It like will detect the subsurface structure underneath the surface on Mars. So hopefully if that launches safely, then we'll get to do some Mars work as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And I've got a question for Elena. So as a GitHub employee, you're used to working remotely. So do you have any tips for working from home? Like how do you manage your time?
Yeah, to clarify, I'm not an employee at GitHub, I'm a contractor, but the company is still remote, and the other company that I work with is also fully remote. So I think there's so many tips floating around that I'm probably not the expert on this. I still very much fail to separate my work life from my personal life. And I think that's the biggest challenge. Like if you work from home, especially if you live in a room where both your work and your personal life happens, then you just kind of lose track of everything. What I find helpful is to put my work computer away for the weekend so I can properly have a weekend and not have to think about work. Also things like turning off Slack notifications. We get so many push notifications every time anyone basically does anything. So that's good, so you can like properly concentrate on work. With regards to tracking time, I'm sure there are plenty of productivity apps that help you do that. There's a method that I sometimes use, probably less than I should. It's called Pomodoro. So the idea is that you work for 25 minutes, so it's just pure concentration, and then for 5 minutes, it's your dedicated relaxation time. And so you basically just keep on iterating that throughout the day. It works, it's nice. You know, the difficulty is always to turn on the app or to get started with that. But yeah, I'm still very much learning how to be a good or better remote worker.
Yep. And how and why did you make the decision to interrupt your studies and move to Panama?
Yeah. So throughout university, I was always, I guess, more interested in things that are not part of the curriculum. I thought that the degree, at least the program that I was on, computer science and artificial intelligence, was incredibly mathsy, and it's just not what I expected. I think it's great if you want to go into academia, but I was definitely more, and still am very much a hands-on person. I like the business side of tech. I like dealing with the money in tech. I enjoy marketing. And all of those things I was able to combine by going to hackathons where I also quite like prototyping or scripting. So going to hackathons, but also by organizing hackathons and being part of the Computer Science Society. And then I was really lucky to intern with GitHub last summer, and my internship was specifically a partnerships internship. So it was in tech, but not software engineering. And I think I just realized how much quicker I can grow and how many more skills that I wanted to learn, I can learn if I don't have to attend university. And I was really inspired by San Francisco and how dangerously motivated everyone is. And so I saw a post on Facebook, and it was a guy basically running a hacker house in Panama. And I decided to move to the hacker house. Previously, I had discussed with my managers at GitHub, you know, how it's going to work moving forward, and I got the contractor position. And so it was a very spontaneous decision, definitely. But I think it's pretty cool. And so yeah, that happened last September. Unfortunately, things that you don't see in all these traveler Instagrams and like nomad and remote work Instagrams or social media or YouTubers or whatever, is that it gets really lonely if you are on your own. And so people kept coming in and out of Panama, and so you don't really have any opportunities to develop real friendships. So that's how that decision came about, and that's how the decision to come back to uni came about. And I feel a bit like a hypocrite, but I'm actually going back this year. And the reason for going back is that it turns out that without a degree, your immigration options just kind of narrow down quite a bit, actually. You can basically, well, if you're not a US citizen, then it makes immigration to the US very difficult. Same with Canada and some other countries. And with Brexit, nobody knows what will happen. So I'm going back to uni. I don't want to, but just to maintain, or rather open up some options in the future.
Yeah, it's also understandable, opening up some new doors, more doors. So this is for all the panelists. So a question about social media. So with social media involvement reaching an all-time high recently, and still being early, so early on in your careers, do you find yourself being victims of comparisons, comparing yourself to peers? Yeah.
Yeah, social media is quite tough. And I think LinkedIn is such a maze that I have not quite figured out how to best use it. And that's also where I think it becomes most toxic, when you just see people posting about all of their achievements and maybe you don't feel so hot that day, and it doesn't make you feel any better. But I mean, it's also a case of accepting that this is the way that life is progressing, and it's important to have a presence than not have one at all. It's tricky to navigate, I have to say, but it's using it for the more positive reasons, like creating a network when you meet people like we're meeting now, and using it to solidify a connection, because with that, like, that's one of the major positives of having social media these days. You can have a network that's so much larger than it used to be able to be. I'm still trying to navigate it, and it is hard, but it's getting there. It's getting there.
So a question for Briana. What can you tell us about your company culture? How do they celebrate achievements?
So I work for a Danish company. So it's a pharmaceutical company. If no one's familiar with Novo Nordisk, it's the largest producer of insulin in the world, and it's headquartered here in Copenhagen. And Danes love to celebrate everything, no matter how small, is celebrated with cake, which is lovely. And we have a lot of cake. Well, before pre-corona times, now we can't bring in cake to the office, but cake is normally the way we celebrate. And I think the culture of the company is partly to do with the industry and partly to do with the fact it's a Danish company. It's a very open and honest culture amongst the Danes. So they have a very open feedback culture for both negative and positive. Is a really important part of how the company works. They have a very flat hierarchy, which is particularly a thing for Northern Europeans. So much of Scandinavia has the same, which is definitely something didn't realize. And having worked in Switzerland before, it's definitely a different experience. But it's also cool nonetheless. Like, you can email a VP quite easily and ask for input if you need it, because that's just the way it is. The hierarchy is incredibly flat, which is a nice, again, networking opportunity, because you can meet so many people and there aren't any limitations to it. And I think what's also been quite an interesting lesson is that Danes are very direct. So I think in the UK, we are very good at putting a lot of fluff in an email, and the first half is just checking in and saying, how are you? And I don't mean to offend, but I really need you to do this. In Denmark, that's not, you just get straight to the point in the first line. There's no beating around the bush per se. So that's also been quite a nice skill, because I think at least in the chemistry department, there was a lot of diplomatic emails around. So it's nice to learn a little bit more, to be a little more concise. When you need something, you need it, and you reach out and you get it done, rather than the kind of getting there slowly. You get to the same conclusion in the end in both methods, but I think the Danish way is definitely a lot faster.
Yep, thank you very much. I've got a question just for the panelists. So could you give what would you do on a normal work day, pre and post COVID? And how do you feel like you use your degree in your current field?
So for me, my normal day usually has classes in it. So I'll have maybe one lecture, but the classes are very small. When you get to graduate school in the US, there would be maybe 5 people in your class. So it's very kind of one-to-one, you get a lot of attention from the lecturer. And it's more kind of a combination of tutorial / lecture. It's not really like the teacher talking at you. It's more like back and forth, which is nice. And then I often also have teleconferences for the space missions that I'm on. And basically you call in with like all the rest of the science team and discuss updates and like the status of the spacecraft and stuff like that, which is quite nice. And pre-corona, that was done like all together, like as a research group in the conference room. So it was like a nice way to like all come together during the day. But post-corona, it's just all virtual. But luckily we can still do our research virtually. We don't have to be in the lab or anything. Yeah, so it's, and then I also will be working on my research like in between those meetings as well.
Very nice. Do you, Elisha, do you have any plans after your PhD? Say for example, postdoc, entrepreneur, teaching?
So I mean, the whole reason I moved to the US was so that I could apply to be an astronaut. So that's kind of the long-term goal. But yeah, like it's kind of limited for me because I'm not a US citizen. The reason I went into like a science PhD instead of an engineering PhD is because there's a lot more opportunities as a non-US citizen in science, like academia, to start working for NASA. Whereas if you're an engineer and you want to work for NASA, you really need to have citizenship because a lot of it is restricted because it's kind of defense related. So like, for example, like I'll be on a telecom for one of the space missions and I have to like leave the telecom because they're looking at like the actual design of the instrument and I'm technically not allowed to see that. Like, so it's very like strict and difficult. But like if you're on the science side, it's much easier. So I'm thinking about doing a postdoc, maybe not. If I didn't have the citizenship situation, I probably wouldn't do a postdoc, but just to like extend the amount of time I can stay in the country, I might do a postdoc. There's also like a really good NASA postdoc program you can apply to as a non-citizen. You don't have to have US citizenship for it, and you can go work in like NASA centers, which is pretty cool. So I'm thinking about applying to that, but seeing as I'm just a first year, I'm still gonna think about it, but it would be really cool to like work at JPL or something like that. Yeah, that's the aim.
That's very nice. I've got a question from the audience. So I think it's directed to everyone. So how have you dealt with imposter syndrome during your careers? And do you have any tips for it?
I can go. No.
Oh.
Bree, do you want to go?
Well, I think, I mean, yeah, I think it's a thing that a lot of people, most people have experienced, and it's not the most pleasant feeling. And I think where I think I've had it the most recently is, so since I'm part of this graduate program, so it's people from all over the world that are selected. And there's quite a reputation in the company for what graduates are capable of and what they should be able to do and deliver. So it's actually quite a lot of pressure, and I feel like it's quite a daily basis where I question why I'm there, and that's really annoying. And I know that I've deserved to be there, and that is just, I know it's also what other graduates feel like, and it's just unfortunately an inherent thing. It's also most often amongst the girls. There are, out of the 20 grads, there are more girls than guys. So that's a nice one. But I don't know, the way you get over it is when you have these kind of small wins and you have a project that you're able to deliver on time, or you're even not even project size, like a task within a project that you're asked to complete, and you do that and you do it well, and you do get feedback that says you've done a good job and you've gone above and beyond, or you've looked at it a different way and people hadn't realized that could be an angle to it. And you just kind of these small bits of feedback that kind of start laying a foundation that you are worth being there. And I think that's something people can actually ask for. I think asking for feedback, whether it's positive or negative, is always a benefit to making you feel more secure in what you're doing. Obviously negative isn't quite as nice, but you also use that as a constructive way and build on it. And the next time you'll get positive feedback because you've learned from your mistake or not doing it quite as well the first time. So I think that's kind of how I've dealt with it in the past year here. I don't know, Elisha, do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say I've felt imposter syndrome like probably the most this past year, like than I ever felt it. I feel like being at Edinburgh was like quite a safe, comfortable environment. Like I was like with my friends who I'd known for like so long, and like, you know, like you kind of know your way around by the time you're in 5th year. Like, but yeah, like I definitely felt it coming here because I was moving into like a completely different field. And like most of the other people in my department like have like a geology or like geophysics background, and I like had no idea about anything to do with geology, like literally nothing. So I definitely like felt that, and I still feel that. And yeah, like there's I get it a lot, like also in terms of the research, the way it works in the US, like a lot of the time, like as an undergrad, you get involved in research. So like quite a few people like in my cohort, like my class, have been doing this same research that they're doing now. They've been doing it for like a couple of years during their undergrad. So they know what they're doing. They like already like are in the swing of things. Whereas I had just like started up in like a whole different field, and I'm like, I have no clue what I'm doing. And it seemed to me that they were just like doing so much better. And I like just found myself comparing myself to like them a lot, and I'm trying to like get over that and like learn to like, okay, like I deserve to be here, like I did get into the school for a reason, like they didn't just randomly pick me, you know. But yeah, I'm still working on it. Yeah.
To piggyback on both of the answers, everyone's in the same boat. Imposter syndrome, I don't think it's very likely to ever go away. I constantly feel like an imposter. So yeah, I guess the best way to deal with it is to think that everyone is in the same boat. I'm repeating the same phrase twice, but yeah. And also I really like the idea of celebrating small wins. I think it's super important to look back, maybe, I don't know, you could do it at the end of the day and think of 5 good things that happened today, or 5 things that you're grateful for. You could do a bigger reflection at the end of the week or in the middle of the week and think, yeah, I'm awesome because I did all those things. So.
Yeah, thank you for the tips. That's great. I've got a question for Elena. So you recently started a CV writing service. Do you have any tips for making a CV stand out?
Yes. So just to give you a little bit of a backstory, I love writing resumes. I think it's really fun, and I think a lot of software engineers and people in science especially can struggle. Well, they struggle putting some of those things into words. So back in October, I think, I started technicalcv.com, where you can book a one-to-one session and we'll completely revamp your resume. So I thought about how I was going to answer this question, and I think there's obviously lots of things that make a resume really good, but 2 things are very important. One, impact versus what you did. So if you, for example, were interning at a certain company and your task was to write an application to manage customer records for a shop, right? So perhaps in that little passage describing your internship, instead of saying, I used these and these technologies to develop this application, and this is what the application did, and at the end of the project, I completed the application. What is way more interesting, and what recruiters a lot of the time look for, is how well can you manage projects, and what is your impact, what is your worth? Because at the end of the day, companies hire you because they believe that you're going to make money for them. So it's really good if you have any numbers, things like that application was used by 5,000 people. Or if it is a customer-facing product, then this product received, you know, outstanding reviews from this many people within this many days, and it got that many downloads. So instead of going into detail about what the product actually is, if you can show that you are basically a value add for the company, then I think it naturally is assumed that you must also be a pretty good software engineer. And this works in a number of fields. And then the second thing, which I think is very often overlooked, because it's such a technical detail, is make sure that your resume is parsable. So if you're applying for a company like, let's say, Microsoft, Google, any of the big ones, or in other fields, I don't know, Bosch, anything, basically, anything that hires a lot of people, chances are your resume might not be printed out as it is. It will be instead fed into recruitment software like Greenhouse, for example. And it will be like where your education section is, or where your professional experience or volunteering sections are. They're going to be automatically laid out on a basically like a uniform template. And then the recruiters take 5,000 of those resumes that all look kind of the same, and then they read through them. So a good way to deal with this is either to use a template online. There are some, I feel like the Google Docs default ones are kind of okay. There's a couple of ones that definitely work and are definitely parsable. And then also just, you know, have your resume and then apply to a couple of jobs. Don't even submit the application, just try applying, where they would automatically parse it for you and then show it back to you and say, is this correct? So things that come to mind, Facebook definitely does this, and it's pretty easy to like fake apply. Google also does this. Yeah, there's a number of companies that do it. Make it easy for people to hire you.
Thank you for the tips. So for the next part of the event, we will have a breakout session for everyone to ask questions and also network. So if there's any unanswered questions there, you can ask the speakers. So this will be approximately 15 minutes, and we'll split everyone up into smaller rooms to encourage more in-depth discussions. So it'll be totally informal and it will not be recorded. There'll be a timer on the top right-hand corner of your window. So once it times out, you will be automatically kicked out, and you will just meet back in this main room. So yeah, that should be it. Yeah, so that was a great networking session. Quite short, but we can continue another time. But a big thank you to the speakers for joining us and taking time out for this. And thank you everyone who attended this event. So over the next few weeks, we have a lot of workshops and a lot of Zoom calls. So we have Unlearn and 𝗘𝗱𝗵, which is next week on Sunday, same time, 4 p.m. And then we have What Will the World Look Like Post-COVID? That should be the week after, and that will be at 11 a.m. And we have a Wikipedia edit-a-thon with Jess Wade. So that will be the week after that. And we have a lot more events planned too. So hopefully over the next few weeks, we will see more of you. And yeah, please follow us on our social media channels, as we will be posting updates on them. And I hope this has been an insightful event, and hope you can join us for the other ones too. Yeah.